Hi guys, my name is Robert Hofmeyer. I'm a South African wildlife cameraman. Currently we are up in northern Botswana filming these beautiful lions. We call them Misfits. But the reason for this video is I wanted to chat about the Canon CN20 lens. So this lens was proposed to Canon by a wildlife cameraman named Ivo Norenberg back in 2010 and released in 2014. Since then, none of the other camera manufacturers have been able to come out with anything similar, which is why Canon can still charge $70,000 for this lens, which is more than my car is worth. It's unfortunately not mine. It belongs to Canon South Africa, who have kindly loaned it to me for this shoot. Thank you. I'm going to chat about this lens while we're in the field filming these lions. Thankfully, lions tend to sleep a great deal, so we should have time to cover all the different aspects of this unique lens. All the wildlife content you see in this video will have been shot on the CN20 lens using my RED V-Raptor camera. For example, if I roll now on Stumpy the lioness feeding her 2 new cubs. And the behind the scenes is being shot on a Vivo X200 Pro smartphone, which I chose because it has really excellent cameras. We are back with the lions, who are sleeping in the shade as usual. Let's start with the specs of this lens. It's a Super 35 lens, which means it doesn't cover full frame. And it is just over 40 centimeters long, and it weighs 6.6 kilograms or so. It comes in both a PL and EF mount, but most people go for the PL, although I currently have the EF at the moment. The most important spec is, of course, the zoom range. It's a 20 times zoom starting at 50 millimeters. So it goes from 50 millimeters to 1000 millimeters, which looks like this. I'm going to roll on a reasonably wide 50 millimeter shot and then zoom all the way in to the head of this little cub who's sleeping under the tree. It also has a 1.5 times teleconverter built in, so it can actually go all the way to 1500 millimeters. There's also a servo unit on the side here that can control focus, iris and zoom. But right now the lions' heads are up and there's a giraffe in the distance, so I'm going to have to continue with this video later. When filming at 1000 millimeters on a lens with absolutely no image stabilization, you need some pretty hefty support to remove any shake. I'm using a Sakla Video 18 fluid head, which is actually too light for this setup. Ideally you need something with a 150 millimeter bowl, like an O'Connor 2575 or similar, but those heads go for, $20,000 or so. Tripod are rated according to the amount of kilograms they can handle, but that is the amount of kilograms that the counterbalance system can counterbalance, and it doesn't take into account the focal length. At 1000 millimeters, let me just zoom in on this elephant's penis. I must apologize for the censorship here, but I need to be a bit careful because I was recently demonetized by YouTube for posting a video showing the homosexual behavior of the male lions of this area. As you will see in this shot, even the slightest tap causes shake. So you have to be incredibly careful when you're filming to keep it as steady as possible. We are sitting here in the teak forest with some of the Misfits. This big lioness on the right is called Blackmouth, and she's called that because, unlike most lions who drink by lapping up water with their tongue, she actually puts her whole mouth in the water, so she often has black mud on her chin. Yeah, they've gone a bit quiet now, they're just resting over there, so we will use this time to chat about sensor size and image coverage. So I'm shooting at 6K with a little bit of vignette at certain focal lengths. If I go out to 8K using the full sensor, which remember is bigger than full frame, the vignetting is terrible. But you can then actually activate the built-in 1.5 times teleconverter with a very satisfying clunk, and what happens is it zooms in the image and you get much less vignetting even on full frame. However, you then do have to multiply your t-stop by 1.5, so the lens isn't quite as fast as it would be otherwise. While we're still in 8K, I'm going to record a clip for you to show you how the vignette changes as we move through the zoom range. This is 50 millimeters. This is 100 millimeters, 200 millimeters, 500 millimeters, and 1000 millimeters. Remember that the vignette is not just dependent on sensor size. The mount type and adapter you're using will also influence how bad the vignette is. Some people do prefer to use an external teleconverter over the internal one. Then they can use either a 1.66 times or even a 2 times teleconverter. This will ensure there's absolutely no vignetting even in 8K full frame. The issue with that though is you can't turn it on and off really quickly, and if you do end up in a situation where you don't have enough light and you need to remove the teleconverter, you then have to fiddle around and take it out and reconnect the camera to the lens. I'm going to do a quick sharpness test. I want to compare 6K with the teleconverter disabled with 8K with the teleconverter enabled. I've set the lens to 500 millimeters. I've focused on this is a lioness named Lucky, and the aperture is at f9.5. I'm just going to roll a few seconds. Then I am going to enable the teleconverter, change it to 8K 16:9. Now it's taking me to f13, so I'm going to go back to f9.5. Should be roughly the same field of view. I will then roll a short clip there. For the analysis of these clips, you'll have to wait till I have these shots on my computer. See you later. Editor Rob here. I've taken a look at the images from this very unscientific test, and when you zoom all the way in, it does seem that there's a very slight advantage to the 8K with teleconverter enabled images over those taken in 6K without the teleconverter, but it's minimal. I'm taking a break from filming cats, and we're getting some shots of these really cute little African jacana chicks. They're tiny, about this big, and they're a good 20 meters away. But yeah, this lens is amazing for filming birds. With a 1.5 teleconverter enabled, and in taking into account the Super 35 crop, it's an over 2000 millimeters full frame equivalent. We've also been filming a lot of great white pelicans. There are quite a few of them about at the moment, and they're really beautiful when they fly in the morning and evenings. And what's really nice about having this large zoom is that when you're trying to film birds in flight, if you're on a normal telephoto lens that doesn't have a zoom, it's often quite difficult to actually locate the bird in the sky because there's no reference point. But with this, you can zoom out, find the bird, and then zoom all the way in. Makes life a lot easier. We are sitting with a beautiful leopard. It's up in a tree. She killed an impala right next to our camp, but she's been searching now for the past 2 hours for her cub. She left the impala and walked a couple of kilometers, and she's been searching around and calling constantly for the cubs and climbing up and down the trees. I really do hope she finds the cubs soon. While we're here, I just want to talk very briefly about Aperture. The CN20 is a T5 from 50 to 560 millimeters. So I'll show you here from 50 millimeters to 560, which is about there. From 560 to 1000, it ramps quite steeply to a T8.9. Much of this ramp occurs once you go past 900 millimeters, accompanied by a measurable drop in sharpness. So if I zoom in further, you'll see the image goes a bit darker. That'll only happen if you are wide open though. Obviously, if you're already at T9, it's just going to stay at T9 all the way through the range. But generally what you do is, when it does get dark, you just stick a bit wider, around 500 millimeters, and you get a lot more light in the lens. All right, see you next time. The cubs and the mother leopard were finally reunited. They eventually came out of the thick and climbed up in the tree with her, and then she took them all the way back to where she had a kill stashed, and they fed, and then they went for a drink down by the river, and we got some really nice footage of them. Good morning. We are sitting with the Misfits again. Just want to show you this lioness. She's just stood up. Her name's Broken Paw. She's got a severe injury to her front right paw that we first noticed back in 2021. Back then she couldn't put weight on it at all. She was hopping around, and the rest of the pride kept her alive and allowed her to feed at their kills. And she sort of became the babysitter of the pride. The pride would leave the youngsters with her while they went out to hunt, and she'd hobble along and follow them later. Since then her paw has improved and she's able to put weight on it and even catch her own prey. But if she walks for a long way, you'll see she starts limping more and more, and often she lies licking that damaged paw. And last year she had 2 cubs of her own, so that's quite a feat for such a severely injured lioness. While we wait here with the lions, I'm going to go over this lens from the front to the back. Let's start with the hood. It's actually quite a nice hood. It's kind of flexible. This cap always falls off though, so I always just tape it to the front of the hood, and I can close it like that, and when I'm shooting I just flip it back like so. Some people prefer to take this off and put a clamp-on matte box on the front. Then you can use filters on the front of the lens, and you can use the flags to control the light hitting the front element. The front of the lens is threaded. It takes 127 millimeter filters. They're quite expensive, but I would suggest putting a clear filter in, because this piece of glass here is a lot more expensive than a clear filter. The lens has markings in meters and feet for focus distance. The rotation of the focus ring is just so buttery smooth, and it goes from infinity to close focus in 180 degrees, so it's very quick to get from one end to the other. There are gears on the focus ring, so you can add an external focus motor, but there's also a servo unit that can control focus, iris and zoom, but we'll discuss that later. So on the top here there are mounting points, and you can buy a top handle from Dens, but it costs about $800. Otherwise Google Chris Evans, he makes one that's quite a lot cheaper and is just as good, if not better. The zoom ring has this kind of pin sticking out of it, which is actually really useful because it makes it very easy to find it when you're looking at the screen or through an EVF. It's got quite a short throw, maybe 45 degrees for the entire way from 50 to 1000 millimeters. The iris ring goes from T5 to totally closed, which is quite nice if you want to make sure there's no light coming through the lens at all while you are black shading your sensor. Next we come to this quite large bump sticking out the left side of the lens with a lever that is incredibly satisfying to use. What this does is it inserts an additional lens into the light path that magnifies the image by 1.5 times. At the rear of the lens we have the back focus adjustment and the macro switch. We'll cover those later. I'm using a Mika RF to EF mount adapter. And they also have an RF to PL mount, and they're quite affordable. They take standard Canon filters. I've currently got a clear filter in, but as the light comes up I'll swap in an ND filter. What's also very nice about this adapter is, even though it's a EF mount, which is normally a kind of bayonet connection, the lens slides in straight and then you twist this lever to lock it in place firmly. Okay, that's all I've got for you now. I must probably get back to my lions, who are still sitting in the shade there, doing absolutely nothing. So one thing I've learned about lions, they have an incredibly acute vision, night vision, and they also know exactly when there's not enough light to film anymore, because that's when they get up and start doing things. They usually lie and do almost nothing all day, and as soon as the light is not good enough for filming, action stations. Anyhow, I'm going to tell you briefly about the power on this lens. So it's fully manual, there's no autofocus, there's no image stabilization, so it doesn't require power to operate, but it won't tell my camera what the focal distance or f-stop is unless it is given power, at least on the EF version. On the PL version, I believe it will receive power through the PL mount, and you'll be able to get the f-stop reading on your screen. So the cable that powers the lens is actually attached to the Servo unit, and it's got I think a 20-pin connector or something in there, but you can buy an adapter that goes to a standard D-tap. So I just connect that up and run it into the D-tap that comes off my battery, and then at least get accurate f-stop on screen, and in the metadata the focal distance and everything else is saved. Here comes Broken Paw at the rear as usual, limping along behind the rest. Literally as we finished filming that bit, about half the lions got up and jogged past our vehicle, and they are stalking a herd of impalas down that way, and there's not enough light to film, and we don't want to disturb the hunt now by starting the vehicle, so we're just sitting quietly and we'll see what happens. Good morning. We found the Misfits, the lions, early this morning before dawn, and we followed them through this beautiful forest. They were on the move, and the small cubs were playing with the bigger cubs. It was really fantastic. 13 lions in total, including the cubs. They were climbing on trees, jumping up on logs, and cubs were playing. So we kept on them until we hit this sort of impassable area, and then we let them go. And we're going to probably loop around and see where they come out, but before we do that I thought we'd do a quick video for you guys. The CN20 is a parfocal lens, meaning that it maintains focus throughout the massive zoom range. This is a huge feat on Canon's part, but in order for it to be perfectly parfocal, the back focus has to be perfect. That means the image plane of the lens has to line up with the sensor of the camera. And your adapter or your mount might be slightly different on certain different cameras. So normally that adjustment is done using very thin metal shims that get put between the lens and the camera. But thankfully, the CN20 has a back focus adjustment ring here at the back of the lens, and it's really quick and easy to adjust the back focus in the field. In order to adjust your back focus, first find an object that's easy to focus on 5 to 7 meters from the camera. Then turn on any focus assist or peaking you might have in camera. Zoom all the way into 1000 millimeters. Make sure your aperture is wide open. You might need to have a very short, very fast shutter speed in order to do that. Focus perfectly on the object at 1000 millimeters, then zoom out to 50 millimeters and loosen and adjust the back focus screw until that object is perfectly in focus. Then tighten the screw, then zoom back in to 1000 millimeters, focus again on the object, zoom back out again, adjust the back focus. Keep repeating that until the focus is exactly the same at 1000 millimeters as it is at 50 millimeters, and at that point your back focus should be perfect. They have also incorporated into the back focus section of this lens a macro button that when you push in and rotate reduces the minimum focus distance from about 3.5 meters to about 1.5 meters at the wide end. It doesn't make much of a difference at 1000 millimeters. This can be incredibly useful if the animals you're filming are really close. You can still manage to focus on them, but when that is activated, the lens is not parfocal and it cannot focus to infinity anymore. While we're outside the vehicle, I wanted to show you my new Suckler speed level clamp. This replaces a traditional screw clamp, and it's actually really great. You just grab it, squeeze it, adjust the level of your camera, get the bubble correct, let it go, and it's solid. It saves maybe a second every time you level, but that's quite important for us because we're constantly moving the vehicle and re-leveling, and maybe in that second you get something magical. We are taking a break from sitting with resting lions to sit with a resting leopard. While we wait, I'm going to show you the servo unit on the CN20, but I do have a bit of sun in my delicate eyes, so I need to pull down my Slim Shady first. There we go. So, when you first attach this unit, or if you've taken it off and reattached it, you need to calibrate it. So to do that, you press the menu button. Ignore that flicker, it's not there in real life. Then you go to ADJ, use this little four-way toggle switch here. Press the switch and it says lens auto adjust. You go to the little Y and you press the switch again, and you'll see it sort of goes through the motions to learn the end points of the zoom and iris, and once you've done that, it will remember them. To zoom, you use this rocker here, and it's quite responsive. To adjust the speed, there's a little volume dial, which you can go all the way to super fast, which will take you from 50 to 1000 in 1.5 seconds, to super slow, which will take, I believe, something like 3 minutes to get you all the way from 50 to 1000 or 1000 back to 50. I usually have my left hand controlling focus, and to reach over the lens and use the rocker is a bit tricky. So I only use this if I have to do a really slow, consistent zoom. Generally I just zoom manually on the lens. For me it's faster and easier. You can also get a zoom controller that attaches to the handle of your tripod. Canon sells one, but most people use the Liebig ZC9 Pro. It's quite affordable. Just note that it requires an adapter because to connect it to the 20-pin connector on the servo unit. Then you can easily control zoom with your right hand while focusing with your left. The unit doesn't have a focus ring built in, so if you want to control focus via the servo, you need to buy a focus demand that then also attaches to the servo with a wire. In a similar manner, Aperture can be controlled by certain cameras, but not mine, when connected via the servo unit. I always just leave Aperture on manual, and then I adjust it by hand over here. This unit is quite complex. You can store different users' settings on it. All these buttons are customizable. It can do all sorts of fancy things. I'm going to try to show you one thing, the framing preset, that you might find useful. So framing preset number 1 by default is assigned to the aux button over here. The way it works is you zoom to your required framing. Let's say it's over there. Then to save it, you hold down the blue mem button and then press the aux button once. Then if you're now zoomed all the way in, you just go and press the aux button. It'll go back to your preset framing. Similarly, if you are zoomed all the way out, press the aux button and it goes back there. In order to change the speed of the preset zoom, go into your menu, select menu, go right twice, and you end up on the preset screen. Then you can go down to the bottom and adjust your zoom speed over here to make it as slow or fast as you desire. While I'm here, I also want to show you that your frame 1, which is we've got assigned to aux, can be a preset for zoom or focus or zoom and focus. I don't have a focus controller, so I can't demo this, but the way this works is the same as for zoom. You set your focus to a preset distance, and then when you press the aux button, it pulls focus for you. When the servo unit is active, you don't want to turn any of these 3 rings manually by hand. You want to control them entirely through this unit. If you wish to control the iris manually, you flip this little switch to M, and then you can turn it by hand. Similarly, if you want to control focus and zoom manually, you just take these switches and flip them forwards, and then you can easily turn the zoom and focus rings. All right, the light is slowly improving. Our leopard has gone from sleeping with her head towards us to sleeping with her head away from us. That was quite dramatic. We're going to sit here and hope something happens before the light is gone. See you in the next one. There's a nice big herd of buffalo here. They're moving out of the bush and coming down to drink. So while we wait, I want to show you how I have mounted the lens and the RED V-Raptor to the tripod head. So the normal way of mounting the CN20 with a camera to a fluid head is to have a bridge plate under the camera and then a dovetail from the bridge plate to the fluid head, then 2 18-inch 19mm rods running all the way to the front of the lens with a lens support attaching them to this little foot at the bottom of the front of the CN20. I prefer one long solid plate that is attached to both the front of the lens and the camera. So I bought a 24-inch dovetail from Pro Aim, and I've screwed the front of the lens on there and mounted the camera over here. The camera is mounted with a dovetail clamp that is bolted onto a wooden camera touch and go quick release. So on the bottom of the camera there is the same touch and go plate that locks into this fluid head. So I can pop the camera off here and then pop it directly onto the fluid head. I've also supported the rear of the lens by a little aluminium block that I purchased from Josh Tarr. He calls it a monkey block because there are 3 threaded holes on the bottom of the lens underneath the 1.5 times teleconverter. Unfortunately, his block does not result in a perfectly level mount of the lens, so I've had to add a bit of a spacer above and below. But I've chatted to Josh and he will be manufacturing the perfect spacer that he will be able to provide with the block if required. Because I'm mounting at 3 different points, the height of the camera has to be absolutely perfect. So I just 3D printed a bunch of thin little spacers that I swapped in and out until I got the height absolutely right. So if I want to put a different camera on the lens or a different lens on the camera, what I do is I release the EF mount, release the dovetail clamp, slide the entire camera back, then pop the camera off the wooden camera touch and go quick release system. Then I can take let's say my 70 to 200 2.8, stick it onto my camera, And the camera already has the correct plate on the underside in order to mount it onto my tripod head. Or I could take, let's say, my Canon R6 Mark II and pop it onto the CN20. It is quite important, especially when filming the lions, to have a way to quickly put on a faster lens, because often things happen as it's getting dark, and so I can quite easily pop on the 70-200. That brings me to a 2.8, or I can even go for a faster prime if I have to. It looks like the buffalo might be starting to cross the river far down the other end of the herd, so we're going to quickly put this back how it should be and go and get some shots. Good morning. It's our final morning filming. We came out and found the entire Misfit pride just 200 meters from our camp, which is fantastic. And they're all just lying here, and we're waiting for the light so we can start filming. So we've got blackmouth, we've got Lucky, we've got broken paw, Stumpy, and then 3 sub-adults, 4 8-month-old cubs, and the 2 new cubs, maybe 8 weeks old. So I just wanted to thank Derek for filming this and for dealing with all my retakes. I'm a lot more comfortable behind the camera than I am in front of it. And especially I wanted to thank Canon South Africa for loaning me this beautiful lens. I'm going to struggle to go back to my own lenses when I come back in about 6 weeks in the dry season to film these lions some more. All right, the lions are all up. The light is arriving. They've actually seen something down that way, so we'd better get ready to shoot. See you next time.